Great. So welcome, everyone. I know everyone's here to talk about and learn more about and share about retail fundraising and fundraising and engaging with everyday citizens. But we're going to put it into the context of leveraging giving moments that exist in the world today. We'll talk about what that is also in a bit. So put it in the context of leveraging giving moments to really reach your resource mobilization needs. I'll quickly introduce myself. I mean, I know Aishwarya has done a pretty elaborate introduction, but just to sum it up, I've been in the nonprofit sector for about 13 years now, primarily in the fundraising and volunteer management space. Moved from the corporate world pretty early on for a one-year experiment. But that first year was really life-changing for me, and that's the reason why I'm still here 13 years later. So I currently work as the India Partnerships Advisor for Giving Tuesday, and I have two of my colleagues as well who's joined the call, Ragini and Hiral. You can say hello to them in the chat as well. And Giving Tuesday is a global generosity movement. It's celebrated in 90 countries around the world. It is a day when millions of people around the world engage in acts of generosity. And a lot of what I will be sharing today is based on learnings from what leaders of this movement and nonprofits who have participated in this movement from around the world have learned over the last 12 years. And, as Aishwarya mentioned, prior to joining Giving Tuesday, I was the India Partnerships Consultant for a global crowdfunding platform for nonprofits called Global Giving. Some of you may be familiar with it. So some of what I'll share today is also from what I learned from my time consulting with Global Giving. And though these learnings are from one giving moment, which is Giving Tuesday, they're actually applicable to any giving moment and any campaign that your organization basically chooses to leverage. We will talk more about Giving Tuesday in a bit, but I want to start off by saying that Giving Tuesday is not a tech platform. You don't need to register anywhere to participate in it. It is a movement. It is a community of people basically coming together to do good. Great. So with that, we will just quickly go over the agenda for today. We're going to keep things as interactive as possible. And as Aishwarya mentioned, please keep a paper and pen or a Google Doc, whichever you're more comfortable with, handy. So we will have several activities that we do through the entire session. So just make sure that if you've not got one already, please make sure you have a paper and pen or a Google Doc open so that you can engage in the activities. And the more you engage, the more you interact on chat, the more you respond, the more useful the session will be for you. Great. So with that, let's talk about giving moments. What are giving moments, right? Giving moments are usually a moment in time when people are inspired and primed to do an act of generosity. And as nonprofits, we can and we already do create these giving moments for our potential as well as current supporters at different times of the year, right? But when we come together to create a giving moment, we like to call them shared giving days or shared giving moments. And what research at Giving Tuesday shows is that giving moments are a lot more effective when people come together or are encouraged to come together to do good as a collective. And of course, there are so many different reasons for this, right? We don't really like drawing parallels with the commercial world because that limits the transformative effect of giving moments. But just for ease of understanding, let's draw a quick parallel. The parallel to giving moments in the retail industry would be the sale season. So there's the end of season sales, there's Black Friday sale, Independence Day sale. The list is basically endless, right? Now, the corporate world has understood the power of these moments and have really capitalized on them using the concept of sales. And all of you would have experienced how the noise around sales is amplified because all major brands come together at the same time to say the same thing. What is it? Come and shop. Everything is on sale. They've realized that instead of doing sales at different times of the year, their amplified voice is actually bringing more benefit to them individually and at lesser effort. Now, can you think of when the nonprofit sector has come together to create our version of these giving moments? You can put that into the chat box. Can you think of any time the nonprofit sector, you've seen the nonprofit sector coming together to create a giving moment. Danutsav, Joy of Giving Week, great examples. Perfect. Yes. Excellent, right? Now, when we give people the experience of coming together as a community, they create feelings of solidarity, like they're part of something larger than themselves. And we can do several things to create shared giving moments to inspire interest in supporting our organization and the sector overall. But what's great is that there are already some fantastic giving moments that exist, some of which have now grown into giving movements. And all we really need to do is join hands and leverage and amplify the volume on giving. And you can see here, data shows that giving moments like Giving Tuesday inspire people to give. And a lot of people give because they want to be part of a bigger group of people doing good. So what is Giving Tuesday? Giving Tuesday was created in 2012 as a very simple idea, a day that encourages people to do good. And over the last 12 years, this idea has grown into a global movement, and it inspires millions of people to give, to collaborate, and to celebrate generosity. And people around the world in almost 100 countries actually come together to give. And they come together as communities, as coalitions, as causes, or just as caring individuals. And the mission of this movement is to unleash the power of radical generosity around the world. And it envisions the reimagination of a world that's built upon shared humanity and radical generosity. I mean, much needed at a time like now when all we see around us today is like terrifying news and basically crisis after crisis. Okay, now if you look at this year's calendar, you'll see that there are several giving moments coming up in the next few months, right? For example, March 1 is India Giving Day, which is a celebration of giving in the US towards projects in India. March 8th is the International Women's Day. April 14th is Good Deeds Day, a global movement of people who are dedicated to doing good and encouraging volunteering. May 12th is Mother's Day. So, I'm sure if we dig a little deeper, we'll find many more such giving moments coming up this year. I just pulled out a few examples to show you. And if you look at the giving or the festive, if you look at the giving or the festive season coming up later this year, you will see several giving moments packed up next to each other. Starting with Danutsav, the example that many of you gave, which is celebrated between October 2 and 8. Then there's World Girl Child Day on October 11, International Day for Eradication of Poverty on October 17, Diwali October 31, World Kindness Day November 13, and all the way to Giving Tuesday on December 3. So this festive season in India is very interesting because it has multiple giving moments that are naturally already falling next to each other. So you can pick and choose the giving moment that make the most sense for you and for your organization. And giving moments that make sense for your organization could even be outside of the ones that I've shared in the last 2 slides. These slides were just to give you an idea of what giving moments are. The best way to leverage these giving moments, though, is to do it together as a group. Because our amplified voice, at the same time, every year will have a special power to it. And data shows the power of giving moments like these. You can see here, Giving Tuesday is is one of the 3 days that people are actively looking to give to new organizations. This data is from the US, but that's because that's where data collection and analysis is most robust right now. But what does this really tell us, right? This tells us that people are yearning for collective giving moments that use a sense of urgency and ways they can feel like they're part of really creating systemic change together with, immediate calls to action. So giving moments like Giving Tuesday are an amazing opportunity to reach new donors, particularly everyday givers, who can become an army for your cause, as long as you, of course, foster those relationships. And if you look at data from last year, $3.1 billion were raised on this single day in the US alone, all going to nonprofits. And this is not large philanthropic funding or CSR funding. This is all everyday givers with an average donation size of about $100 to $140. So that's around 10,000 rupees. Now, while Giving Tuesday is a big Giving Day, and while many people may think of it as a fundraising day, it's actually so much more than that. It is a generosity movement giving agency to everyone and focuses on this very interesting notion that everyone has something to give and every act of generosity counts, irrespective of its size or form. So you'll see that there's actually giving that happens in all forms, but of course, these are much harder to track than tracking money. And for nonprofits, it's a day to experiment. Last year, we learned that about 82% of the participating organizations used Giving Tuesday to experiment and try something new. So it could be a new message you want to try out, a new campaign, a new audience, new fundraising idea. This is basically a great opportunity for you to try something new along with many other nonprofits that are experimenting at the same time. All right. Now we'll spend a few minutes on what we've seen working with giving moments. So from observing and just studying data from Giving Tuesday, the day, we know a few things. One is that generous people are generous. And this is applicable to not just giving moments, this is applicable to your fundraising overall. So the first thing we learned is that generous people are generous, okay? Which means people who've given you once will give again. You just need to make the right ask and at the right time. People who have given you once are more likely to give again than someone who has never given to you before. That's one. Second is that supporters want multiple ways to give, not just giving of money. People who give in one form tend to mostly also give in other forms. You can see on the graph here that people who only give money is actually the smallest group. People who give in one form usually also want to give in other forms, or usually do give in other forms. And people, especially millennials and Gen Z, want engagement with your organization, want engagement with your cause, and don't want to have a transactional relationship. And while we don't have a crystal ball, we do have a lot of data because we do a lot of surveys. And from recent donor surveys, we know that people are more tied to the cause than to the organization. So this is very important when you think about the messages that you put out. And 77% of the people that the respondents to the survey said that they give with their heart than with their heads. The other piece of information we learned is that givers need clear calls to action and very simple ways to participate, but in more than one way, just to honor all the assets that they can give. So if you want to build long-term relationships with your donors, offer them different ways to support your cause and to join you. However, giving moments have also become pretty competitive, right? With many nonprofits fighting to receive their piece of the pie on this single day. And there's actually an economic term for this phenomenon. It's called the fixed pie fallacy. That's the idea that there's only a certain amount of wealth to go around and that you must compete to get your share of what's believed to be a finite resource. But if you think about it, generosity is not finite, and neither is money by which we measure it. I don't know how many of you have read last year's How India Gives report by the Center for Social Impact and Philanthropy. What they said was the quantum of giving by households in India went up to 27,000 crores from 23.7 thousand crores the previous year. And the main reason why people who said they don't give, said they did not give, was because they were not being asked, which just shows the huge potential of giving in this country. And believing in this fixed pie fallacy is actually going to hurt the sector. And it goes against the principles upon which movements like Giving Tuesday and weeks like Danutsav was founded on. Now, there are many ways to practice an abundance mindset in your resource mobilization. It could be things like partnering with other NGOs, co-fundraising, seeking generosity in different ways. I'll ask Hiral to just put a link into the chat box with many more ideas that you could potentially explore. So after the webinar, you can take a look at that link if you're interested. Excuse me. Okay. So with that, we'll get into the more practical side of things. I hope you have your paper, pen, etc. ready. And today we're going to work on how you can plan and leverage upcoming giving moments using a resource mobilization campaign. Okay, I'm going to take a sip of water. Okay. So as fundraisers, your individual giving strategy might be year-long, and that makes total sense. However, if you are looking at leveraging giving moments and engaging everyday citizens and engaging in retail fundraising, one of the best way to do this is through running a campaign. And you don't have to think of something elaborate and complex and highly produced when you think of the word campaign. A campaign just means raising a very specific amount of money or another type of resource for a specific purpose, right? And it has a very clear goal with a start date and an end date. And campaigns are a great way to engage with your community because it has these clear goals or call to action. It spans across a specific period of time. It's able to evoke, an emotional response amongst the community. And most campaigns also have a deadline, which kind of creates a sense of urgency. Now, running a campaign is a lot of work, but if done well, it can also be a very effective way to mobilize resources that you need for your organization. Now, the most important step is to take time to plan. And if you want to run a resource mobilization campaign in the next 2 to 3 months, you need to start planning soon. And our research shows that campaigns that have a goal and a plan of action have a higher likelihood of success than those that don't. So the first step in the process of running your campaign is to set a goal. Okay. Now, question for all of you. If you were creating a resource mobilization campaign for an upcoming giving moment, let's say Giving Tuesday or Good Deeds Day or World Kindness Day, what would you set as your goal? Put it into the chat box. So if you were creating a resource mobilization campaign for an upcoming giving moment for your organization, what would you set as your goal? What do you want to achieve through this campaign? You can put it into the chat box and we'll read out a few. Okay, I see one, e-literacy education for all. How about the others? Any goals? To raise funds for education of students in rural villages, great. Restarting our classes in a childcare home, which was stopped due to financial constraints, okay. Child safety. Fundraising for registering more blood stem cells, donors. Great. These are all great examples of a very broad goal for your campaign, right? Super. Thank you for sharing. Now, what we're going to try and do is try to convert these goals that you've put into the chat. And if you've not put into the chat already, I'm hoping you've written it down on a piece of paper or on your Google Doc. We're going to try and convert these broad goals that you've put down into SMART goals. And I'm sure most of you have already heard about SMART goals. It's a very common acronym. But SMART goals help in making sure your goal is specific, measurable, aspirational, relevant, and time-bound. And specific means that the goal has to have something specific that it's trying to achieve. It can't be just raising more money, right? That's a broad goal. How much money and for what will really help make the goal a lot more specific. Then measurable, right? Unless the goal is measurable, you will not know whether you're reaching the goal or not. So you'll need a number or an indicator attached to your goal so that at specific milestones through the campaign, you know how well you're doing. And at the end of the campaign, you can basically tell whether you've reached your goal or not. Aspirational, right? Your goal needs to be realistic for you and your team. However, it should also be exciting enough for your team as well as for the community to get involved in. So an aspirational but realistic goal is always exciting for people to get involved. Now, relevant, right? Is the goal relevant for your project and for your community? That's a question for you to answer. Make the goal something that is easy for your community to relate to. The last one is time-bound. Create a sense of urgency, right? Having a deadline for your campaign will really create that sense of urgency and push people to take action as opposed to a goal that has no deadline and is going on forever. Okay, so let's take one example. Yeah. And one example of a broad goal and convert it into a smart goal. Okay, so some of you, had raising money for specific projects as your broad goal. So say that is your broad goal. How do we make it smart? Now, to make this goal more specific, let's say we want to raise 5 lakh rupees. And I'm giving a very, very simple example, just for ease of understanding. So, say you want to raise 5 lakhs to purchase 200 chairs for a classroom. So this goal is specific and it's already measurable, which is great. And if you're able to raise 5 lakhs and purchase 200 chairs, you know that your campaign was a success. Now, is the goal aspirational? Does it feel too easy? Or does it excite you? And maybe even keep your team and you up at night a few days, right? This is something for each organization and each person to decide for themselves when you're setting the goal. And let's also try to make the goal time bound. So raise 5 lakh rupees to purchase 200 chairs for the classroom by December 3. Now, this creates a sense of urgency and helps members of your community know that they need to take action by a particular date. Now, your goal does not necessarily need to be around raising more money. It can be so much more, right? And I've just put down some examples of broad goals and how you can convert them into smart goals. So it could be, raising funds, as many of you have mentioned, but it can also be around increasing your individual supporter base. You just want to increase the number of supporters to your organization. That could be the goal of your campaign. Maybe it's a volunteering campaign. Your goal is around increasing the number of volunteers. Maybe your goal is just around improving your skills in retail fundraising or online fundraising. So your goal can really be anything. It doesn't have to be necessarily tied to raising funds. It can be even nuanced aspects within raising funds, right? So whatever your goal is, always try and make it a smart goal, because that will help you in your planning much better. Okay. Now, another exercise, for all of you. What would be a smart goal for your campaign? So all of you have either put down into the chat or written down on a piece of paper your broad goal for the campaign. So try and see how you would convert that broad goal into a smart goal. Okay, so take like 2 minutes to think about it and put it into the chat box, and we can share and learn from each other. I'm going to put this back here so you have this example handy. So take 2 minutes, take your broad goal and convert it into a smart goal. And if you have any questions, please put it into the chat box as well. So Neeru's put in smart goal here. Get 30,000, I'm assuming 30,000 rupees per child in 1 week for 20 students in my school for underprivileged. Okay. Raise 2 lakh rupees to purchase computers. No, 20 lakh rupees to purchase 10 computers for setting up a computer lab by 1st June. To raise 4 lakh rupees for education of girl children in KGBV schools by April 1st towards infra setup. Great. 20 supporters to pledge monthly giving to restart classes in a childcare home for 30 boys and girls by end of this month. Excellent. So many coming in. Raise 10,000 rupees per student for a year-long football training program. Anjali, I would ask you to talk about how many children as well. And by when? Your end date also. By when do you need to raise this money? Anu says raise 1,80,000 for registering 100 donors for Sultana diagnosed with blood cancer between 1st to 15th March. Great. Super. Great. 100 girls by 31st March. Perfect. Okay. Superb. Thank you so much for sharing those. And those who haven't shared in the chat, I hope you're putting down into your paper. And keep that with you. We're going to work on this. All right. So I'm still waiting for the day when we can all post fundraising appeals on the internet, go to sleep, and wake up the next day with a whole lot of new donations and donors. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. Someday we'll get there. So planning is still very key to a successful campaign. And it's actually the second most important step to take when you're prepping for an upcoming giving moment. Now, if you want to run a resource mobilization campaign in the next 2 to 3 months, you have to start planning now. I think I've mentioned that already. And now that we have our SMART goals, let's start planning out your campaign, right? Now, to plan out your campaign, one of the things that you could consider doing is to first create some sub-goals. So we can break that big goal down into smaller chewable bites. So say, some of you had goals like raising 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, etc. So say that is your overall overarching goal. How do we break these into smaller, more chewable bites, right? So say I've taken here 10 lakhs, but it's a little more when you add up. So say you have a goal of 10 lakhs. You can say that I will raise, one of my sub goals would be raising 3 lakhs from 5 HNI donors. The deadline, etc., remains the same. And I've, put in person responsible, etc. here. So raising 3 lakhs from 5 HNI donors, raising 3 lakhs from diaspora donors on Giving Tuesday, raise 2 lakhs by converting, donors who've given me 1,000 rupees, asking them to give me 2,000 rupees this year. Then raising 5 lakhs from 5 fundraising advocates who could be potentially raising 1 lakh each from the organization. And maybe a small goal around social media, because, maybe I've not done social media fundraising so much. So experiment with it a little bit and put 50,000. Now, if you see here, this is, again, just a draft, just an example. Your sub-goals could look very different from this. But what happens here is you're taking that large goal that you have and breaking it down into sub-goals that will help you really think through and plan your campaign much better. Now, I won't ask you to complete this task right now, but do take these steps down and the framework. So you can do this when you're sitting with your team and creating the plan for your next campaign. So I'll just give you a minute or so to go over this. And this is only a framework, okay? Nothing written in that framework is applicable to all organizations. You will have to fill it in with what works best for you and for your team. Peter, I see a question, diaspora donors, great question. So diaspora donors are basically potential donors who are of Indian origin living in another country. So this is the activity when, don't do it right now, but just take the steps down so you can do it with your team later on. All right, so we'll move on to step 3, which is getting your story straight and taking your campaign and message to the world, okay? Question for all of you. Can anyone guess how much time a potential donor spends on a fundraising campaign page before moving to the next page or going further? So they'll either move to the next page, not interested, or they'll try to learn more about your campaign. Can anyone guess the amount of time a potential donor spends on a page, a fundraising campaign page on the internet? 30 seconds to 1 minute, 30 seconds, 5 minutes. Okay, good guesses. 2 minutes, 10 seconds, less than 1 minute. Okay, let me give you the answer. It's 4.2 seconds. Think about your own behavior on the internet, right? Like when you're scrolling, how much time do you spend on a page before deciding I want to click on it and read it or just skip it? And this is data from Global Giving fundraising pages. And when running a campaign, you don't necessarily need to do it. So this is how much time you have, right? This is how much time you have to grab someone's attention. So just like a piece of information for you to keep in mind. And we'll go through steps on how to take advantage of this as well. Now, when running a campaign, you can do it on your own website and use social media and email to amplify. Or you can leverage an existing fundraising platform which has additional features. instead of, creating the whole thing on your own. So if your campaign is about getting new volunteers, to give their time and talent to your organization, you could even consider working with a volunteer management organization like ConnectFor, or you could do it on your own website, right? The choice is yours. Just wanted to say that before I go further. And giving you an example of how a fundraising page could potentially look. So once you've put in all your information into a fundraising page, the page would look something like this. And it would obviously look slightly different depending on the platform you're using. But in most cases, the project title is the first thing that you will see. And this will determine whether a person keeps reading and continues to stay to donate. So it's important that you have a title that reflects the work that you do. So in terms of a project title, because it is the first thing donors will see, it has to be clear, short, and descriptive. This is also what gets pulled up on, Google and other search engines when donors search using specific keywords. So it should convey what your project is doing in one phrase and tell us a few things. One, who is your project helping? So in this example, it is helping village children. 2, how are you benefiting them? Here, by providing education. 3, how many people is your project helping? So in this case, it's 40. And where is your project based? Here, it's Bodh Gaya. Right? So who is your project helping? How are you benefiting them? How many people is your project helping, or how many things? And where is your project based? I mean, it's such a short, simple sentence, but it's actually answering all of these questions for you in this title. Similarly, you can look at this example here that I pulled from the Give platform. And it seems to be answering all the required questions except one. What do you think is missing? Can you read this and tell me what is that one piece of information you really want but is not in this title? Location? Yeah, excellent. So location is the one that's missing here. Deadline, of course, it's missing in the title, but you don't necessarily need to mention that because most platforms will have a deadline already on the sidebar. So it's important for you to have your deadline in your goal, and that will get presented. But location is the piece that's missing here, right? Like for many donors, location might be super important when they're trying to support and give to a cause. Great. Next thing is project photos, right? This is, again, one of the most important components of your page because photos grab the attention of potential donors and help them understand your organization, program participants, and the community that you serve. So you will have to test and see what types of photographs work best for your organization. But for long-term engagement with a donor, positive and empowering imagery always work best. Now, a test that I usually run before posting picture of anybody on the internet, especially a fundraising appeal, is to see, would I be okay if I am portrayed in this manner? If my photo is put up on the internet in this manner, would I be okay with it? If my answer is no, then I would not post that picture. So that's a test that I run for myself. And the other things that we've seen working is that image focusing on one individual or a very small group tend to get more clicks than images that have a lot of people and a lot of activity going on in them. So image with focus on one individual or a very small group. But again, this is something for you to test and see what works best for your organization. Okay. Now, the next is the project summary, right? This is the next thing that the potential donor will see. And it's going to appear at the top of your page under your photo. And this project summary should tell us a few things because most people won't actually read beyond this. They'll read the title, see the image, and then read this, and then decide whether to give or not. Most people won't read the long description below. So what should this summary tell you? It should answer most of the questions that are already in the title. That is, who are you helping? Where are you doing it? What are you doing? How are you doing, etc. And should answer one other very important question is the why. Why are you doing this? Why is this project? Why does this project exist? So we'll check out one example. This is from an organization called Seva Mandir. And their project is to provide support and rehabilitation, counseling services, legal aid, medical and psychological care, and a lot more to women suffering from violence and harassment in rural India, specifically in Udaipur. So you can see here, such a short summary, but it answers all of the above questions, starting with the why. It starts with the why, right? So I think beyond this, it's really about putting yourself in the shoes of the donor who doesn't know anything about your organization or have the same passion that you have, right? And so how do you make them feel for the project the way you feel? So on most platforms, if you've already written your project summary, you should be able to edit it at any point. So if you have a page already on a platform or on your website, you're fundraising, perhaps consider going back and checking if your summary answers these questions. And in case you're starting from scratch, these are some points for you to keep in mind. And somebody in the chat box asked for names of platforms. I will mention that at the end as well. Great. Okay, so now we've got our fundraising page ready or your volunteer request page ready. The next step is to map out your network, the most important step. And a common misconception people have about the word crowdfunding or retail fundraising is that a new crowd will suddenly come and join you, right? But it's actually not that. It's about reaching out to whoever is in your network and effectively utilizing your existing network to start expanding outwards. So to firstly understand who is your crowd, let's understand what networks are. What are networks? A network is a group or system of interconnected people. That's it. It's just a group or system of interconnected people. And a network map is a visualization of all of these connections. Okay, I'm going to show you an image. Can you guess where this is from or what this is? Where is this from? Has anyone seen this before? A similar image? Airline route. Okay, good guess. Okay, so this is actually from the online networking nuclear cells. Okay, this is actually from the online networking site LinkedIn. And LinkedIn used to have this very interesting feature long time ago, where you could make your network map of your contacts. And how it basically works is it assigns different colors based on how people are in your network. So for example, there would be one color for all the people you went to the same school with, one color for people you worked in specific organizations with, etc. So you'll see that they're all interconnected and different colors basically represent your main networks. And LinkedIn has discontinued this feature called in-map, but we can be inspired by these maps and create our network maps, right? And what's interesting to note here is that everyone's network will look different, even if we are from the same organization, because our individual personal networks are so much more. So the first step, so we're basically going to create our network map now. And the first step to mapping out your network is to identify who's in your network. And when you begin this process, you'll quickly realize that you belong to a lot of different networks, both formal and informal, right? And your network is bigger than you think. Let's start with whether you can tell me who's in your network. And we can start with like the closest people in your network, closest networks that you have. So tell me who is in your network. You can put it into the chat box. Relatives, friends, great. Family, friends, colleagues, classmates, great, excellent. Yep. So exactly. So family, friends, colleagues, neighbors, community leaders, previous donors, these are all part of your immediate network, right? But if you think about it, your network is actually even larger than this, right? This is your closed network. So let's think about your organization's network, right? It could be your board members, local business owners, and I'm not talking about like the MNCs. I'm talking about the bakery next to your project site. I'm talking about the little local private school next to your office building. So it could be any type of small local business, Indian diaspora that I mentioned earlier, living in other countries, leaders in the sector, leaders who work on similar causes as you do. Somebody mentioned alumni in the chat, which is great. So people who are part of your program, who are no longer part of the program because they are now part of the alumni, and they are the best advocates for your program. Even maybe religious institutions in your locality. So your network is actually much larger if you sit down to think about it. And here's a framework of one way to think about your network map, right? It shows you how you can think about the groups you're connected to and thinks about it in different tiers. So the first tier, the first little circle, primary circle, is group of people you could reach out to personally today. And it wouldn't be weird. So you can reach out to them on WhatsApp or a call or text, and it's okay, right? So that's all the people in your close network. Then there's the second tier, your secondary network. And these are people you could reach out to, but it may need more of a formal introduction or require a reintroduction by someone in your primary network. Then there is the third tier. This is people you should or could know, but it might take, again, a networking event or an introduction or sending out newsletters, mass email, PR, etc. So these could be, Instagram influencers or community figures, local businesses. You're not connected to them right now, but they're great to be connected to for your project or your campaign. So this is one way to think about your network. Another way to think about your network is using these grids. And depending on how your brain works better, you can even think about these little grids that segments them by type. And this framework you can actually download from the Global Giving website free of cost. You can go there and search for network map. So depending on how your brain works, you can think about positioning it differently. Now, when you're creating your network map, don't focus only on people who can be donors, because not everyone in your network or crowd will be a donor. And that is, and that is okay, right? Your goal with the network map is to firstly put down a full list, and then we'll see what each of them can give you, because everyone has something they can offer to your organization or at least to your campaign. And when you think of what people can offer, you can use what we call at Giving Tuesday, the 4 T's of giving, right? So people can offer you their time, their talent or their expertise, their treasure, that's things and money, or their voice through testimony. Plus, there are people who can give you contacts. So it could be, someone who's part of an HR network, or someone who has influence, like the CEO of a company or a local government body representative or a social media influencer, right? So technically speaking, everyone in your network actually is a giver and can give you something or the other, if not for money, right? Okay, so let's take 2 to 3 minutes and do the first step of this exercise, which is to identify 5 networks to which you belong. Any 5 networks. It can be anything from your school alumni group. And think about, we'll start with you as a person, and then later you can do this as your organization. So start, for the purpose of today's exercise, you as a person, identify 5 networks to which you belong. It could even be something like a local Rotary Club that you're part of. It could be your family. It could be a corporate that you worked with prior to this job. It could be your college. So it doesn't have to be a network that you're actively part of. So just write the names down of 5 networks that you're a part of. And just to show you, your network map could even look like this at the end of the exercise. So think of any way in which you want to visualize it. So take 2 minutes. Thanks, Anjali. So this you don't have to share on the chat. Thank you for sharing, Anjali. This is a great example for everyone else. School, college, family, football group, housing society. Great. So write it down on your piece of paper. This is your personal exercise. You don't have to share with anyone. So no worries, not at all. No problem. You've not shared any personally identifiable details, so it's fine. And for those of you who finish this, go to the next step, which is write down names, real names. Don't put this into the chat box, of 5 people in each of these networks that you know of. So if it is school, your school group, write the names, real names of 5 people in that network that you are in, that you know of. So names of 5 people under each network. And when you're done, just put done into the chat so I know. So by the end of this exercise, you'll have 25 names of real people. Anybody done? Great. Thanks, Anjali. Thanks, Rini. Yeah, a few more people say done and then we can move ahead. Great. Okay, so keep that paper handy with you. Okay, don't lose it. We'll come back to it. Again, if you haven't finished, we'll find some time at the end to come back. I have a lot more to cover. So I'm going to go ahead. And, just when we talk about fundraising or resource mobilization of any kind, we always talk about givers, right? Something that I learned during my time at Global Giving was that when we look at our network, we should also look for another category of people. These are our potential getters. And getters may also be givers, but more importantly, they are people who can be advocates for your project. So you could call them, fundraising advocates, fundraising champions, volunteer fundraisers, etc. And typically speaking, your inner circle of getters will be much smaller than your larger circle of potential givers. So these are people who can go out and, mobilize resources on your behalf. And what data shows that even today, peer-to-peer fundraising, which is an individual fundraising from another individual for a cause, is one of the best strategies to access new donors. Again, in the How India Gives report by CSIP from last year, what it says is that critical sources of information for giving to non-religious organizations, that's basically NGOs, it remains in-person outreach by volunteers or agents and word from family and friends is the most critical source of information for how people give to NGOs. So it basically shows that people still give to people. Has anyone used fundraising advocates or champions or volunteers for your cause before? If you have, just put it into the chat box as well. And, these getters can actually come from anywhere, but it could often include staff, volunteers, current donors, board members, your mother, really anyone on your network map who feels passionately about your mission. And these are people who join you as a part of your core team only for the period of your campaign, right? You can't reach out to them full year and ask them to fundraise for you. Just during the time of the campaign, when you are planning a campaign, you invite them to be part of that core team to reach your goal. Now, an ideal fundraising advocate would have a large network, have the time to commit and be passionate about your cause, would be able to tell the story of your cause, etc. But then age really doesn't matter. It can be any person of any age. And in today's world, location also doesn't matter. They'll be able to support you from anywhere in the world, right? So if you, if your getters are basically doing all the work and helping you reach your campaign goals, then what is your job as a fundraiser or as a volunteer manager? What you really need to do is to build trust because getters do need advanced notice and perhaps some pre-prepared communications. What you could do is to give your fundraising advocates or getters some goals, the way you set your goal. Ask them to take a small piece of that goal as their own personal goal. It could be, I will get you 10 new donors, or I will raise 1 lakh rupees to reach your 5 lakh rupee goal. So support your getter to come up with their own goal, present your larger organizational goal as well. And then you could even guide them through a network mapping exercise. The way we just did the network mapping exercise, you could help them do the same, right? And this is really how you can rapidly expand your realm of potential givers. And once the fundraising campaign starts, you have to really check in with the whole fundraising group, have maybe daily calls or email threads, be on a WhatsApp group together. So some sort of accountability and support system is something that you can create. So follow up regularly with them, and then of course say thank you a lot. So that's really your role, really, as a fundraiser in the campaign. Now we finished part 1 and part 2 of this activity. Part 3 is to look at your map and see what different people in your network can give, or how they would like to engage with your cause, right? This is an assumption that you're going to make. So just because these are 25 close people, just look at them and think about what is it that these people can give towards my campaign. So it could be that someone is a person of influence, so they can give influence. Someone can give things. Someone has a specific talent they can offer. Maybe they're good at graphic designing, can help with graphic designing for your campaign. Someone can give you money. Someone has contacts that they can offer. So go in and assign against each person's name what they can offer your organization or campaign. You can even use codes like I for influence, C for contacts, TH for things, etc. So take 2-3 minutes to do this. For the 25 people, think about what is it that they can offer your campaign. And it could be that one person can give you more than one thing. If you're done, you can put done into the chat. And if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute or put it into the chat box. Any questions about the exercise? Thank you, Deepak. Aishwarya will answer the last bit of the question. And she will share, our contact details in the follow-up email, so you can reach out to us as well at Giving Tuesday. Done. Great. So if you finished this first part, I'm going to add one more item for you to do, which is from your 25 list of people, identify, say, 3 people who could become potential getters or fundraising advocates for you, right? So getters are basically people who can speak to your work and have the desire and the time to basically help with your project during the time of your campaign. So just identify 3 people who you could potentially go and ask to become fundraising advocates for your campaign. And this exercise is super powerful. I mean, we spent like 10 minutes max doing it, and we already have 25 people that we've mapped out. Think about doing this with your whole team, right? And spending at least 30 to 40 minutes doing this exercise step by step. If you sit down and do that regularly with your team, you'll see how large your network is and how you can leverage the potential that each person has in your network. It may be that not everyone is a donor, but there's definitely other things that they can offer to your project, your organization, or just that campaign that you're running. Okay, so since we're a little short on time, I'm going to continue, but do keep this in mind and continue doing the network mapping exercise, not just alone, but with other members in your team as well. And next, we'll go into crafting your ask. And we won't get into the details of creating a communication strategy for your campaign, because that is a whole workshop in itself. But let's look at some basic things to get started, and we'll go over some learnings from Giving Tuesday data as well. So think of your communication campaign in 2 phases. One is outreach to your getters and then outreach to your givers. So you need to prepare outreach to both, right? And it's important to have separate strategies for each of these groups, because you are asking them to do very different tasks and take on very different levels of responsibility during the campaign. So first off, you need to approach your getters earlier than your givers, and just to help them prep. So communication and outreach to your getters need to start at least 2 weeks to a month before the start of your campaign, because you need to prep them and you need to make sure that they're interested in doing this. So that's just like a basic thing for you to keep in mind. Another thing I would say is don't sleep on your email. Don't snooze email. It is till date the #1 converting mechanism to get donations, even beyond social media, advertising, or mostly anything else you do. Because think about it, people who have subscribed to your email list are people who are actually already bought into your mission, because they already know you and they are ready and eager to support you. You just have to ask, and at the right time, in the right way, right? And then some people ask, how many emails is too many emails? And I would say enough where you can still be relevant and interesting to that audience. And in any case, if you're running a campaign, multiple emails should be sent days leading up to that giving moment and the day before. And, if it's a single day campaign, then through that day. And if you think about it, an average individual is only subscribed to like 5 to 7 email newsletters from nonprofits max, right? So sometimes we worry we're sending out too many emails. We might be sending out too many emails asking for donations, but think of other ways in which you can interact with your email list as well, instead of just asking for donations or giving an update. But segmentation is very important, right? Like, you don't want to send out a mass email to your major donors, to your board, somebody who just already gave you like 1 day before. And you can automate a lot of this if you have a CRM system. If you don't, you can even use an Excel. So don't worry about that. But if you are planning to, get really serious about individual fundraising, one thing that you can think about, talk to other peers in the sectors about good CRM systems that you can potentially start using. Okay. Yeah. So in short, your job as a fundraiser for your campaign should be to give people different ways to engage and join you. Because when you are meeting givers where they are, you actually move them from, having a transactional relationship with you to actually having a transformational relationship. So offering people many ways to engage with your organization, you actually move them along this relationship ladder from just being aware about your program to actually becoming an advocate for your program. And if you're going to run, a longer campaign, say for a month, this is just, I would encourage you to create a calendar, a communications calendar. This is, again, just a sample. You don't have to copy it how it is, but it's important for you to think about how your communication will be staggered and planned through that entire period of the campaign in advance. You don't want to wake up that day and think, oh, what am I sending out today? So thinking about a sample calendar is also super important. Do you know what is the biggest secret to successfully leveraging a giving day or a giving moment? Can you put it into the chat box? What is the biggest secret to successfully leveraging a giving day? Any guesses? No guesses? One big secret. Influencer. Okay. Anyone else? Smile. Okay. Possibly. Okay, so this is a tip from Giving Tuesday's ex-director of digital strategies, which I found very interesting. Reminders, nudges, identifying with the event. Okay, all great ideas. I found this tip super interesting. And it's actually the humble but effective calendar invite. So literally get the giving moment you've chosen onto your supporters' calendars. So this way they'll receive a notification that it's time to give. Right? Most of our lives are now kind of detailed using Google calendars, Outlook calendars. So find a way to get onto people's calendar if you want them to give on a specific day, or if you want them to give you before a specific deadline. But some things for you to keep in mind is make sure your donors can't see each other's email addresses or be able to modify the calendar invite. And the safest way to do this is there is an app called Add Event, ADDEVENT. You can go on to Add Event and actually create an event and then send it out to people who can actually add it to their calendar. So that way they'll not forget to give you on that specific day or before a specific deadline. Yeah, super. I found this super interesting. Great. So, and all the things that you guys have put into the chat box are also super important. And before I talk about, we are going to close in about 5 minutes, but before I talk about strategies we've seen change makers, especially nonprofits, use successfully to make the most of Giving Tuesday, I want to say that you should do what makes most sense for your organization, depending on where you are at with your, within your retail fundraising journey, where your bandwidth is and what your goals are. And I'll highlight a few things that, you can hopefully take back as inspiration. One thing we've seen a few organizations do is collaborate with another organization to leverage a giving moment. So it's basically something like mission over brand. So one of the examples we've seen is this gardens project and an agricultural project, which was around the same geography. They both wanted volunteers. So instead of competing for volunteers, they decided to run a campaign together on Giving Tuesday. And they marketed that campaign together. So they got double the volunteers. The volunteers spent half a day in the first organization, had lunch together, and then moved on to the second organization. So both the projects were able to really leverage each other's strengths and succeed. Another interesting thing we've seen people do is you're constantly fundraising and trying to mobilize resources for your own organization, which is super important. But some organizations also use specific giving days to volunteer or fundraise for another cause, right? Like get your whole team together and say, we are going to another nonprofit, and today we are going to support another cause. That's really like, it's a mindset shift for a lot of employees, a lot of staff members in your organization to think about, okay, today we're going to go and work for another cause. Because most people in the sector are here to do good, and that itself will be super motivating for them. And for, funders and donors, seeing that you're doing that itself, is a great sign. So we've seen this also happening on giving days specifically, not saying the whole year, just 1 or 2 days that you pick. Some organizations choose not to ask for funds on Giving Tuesday because fundraisers here know that fundraising is a lot more than just asking for funds, right? We need to find ways to constantly engage our donors and manage these relationships. So we've seen some organizations use Giving Tuesday to foster donor relationships through non-financial asks. So they say, come and give your time, your expertise. And then, we've also seen some organizations hosting tankathons. What they do is they call volunteers on one single day. And they say, call all the donors who have given to us in the last 1 year and just say thank you. Just don't ask for anything. Call and say, you've donated to this charity this year. I'm volunteering with them. And I just want to say thank you for what you've done. Really, really inspirational when, you're getting the volunteers also feel inspired and connected to your cause, and the donors also feel great about it. Then some organizations use giving moments like Giving Tuesday as a grand finale or the beginning of a campaign that they're running. So the campaign could be 2 weeks, 1 month, but they use Giving Tuesday as a bookend, so the beginning or the end of their campaign. And we also see a lot of organizations in India who have FCRA using Giving Tuesday as a day to fundraise from foreign donors. So you need to have FCRA permission to be able to do that if you're raising funds from outside of India. And it's pretty massive in the US, right, in particular. So if you're looking at growing diaspora giving or giving from individuals outside of India, I would encourage you to include Giving Tuesday in your fundraising strategy, because there's already a wave of giving that's anyway going to happen on that day. Okay. We won't go into the details of how you can use data for fundraising, but just want to quickly touch on some very, very simple things that you can use, to get data to support your campaign. One is measurable goals. We already set measurable goals, but make sure you actually measure it at the end of your campaign and throughout your campaign. You can organize something known as an after-action review. This is something that our team does on a regular basis after every project, where you sit down together and think about what did you expect to happen, what actually happened, what worked well, and what did not work well. What did we learn from this campaign? And document all of this so that the next time you want to run a campaign, you actually have this document to go back to remember what you learned from your previous one. Then another thing, which is very, very, very important, is to add all the new donors you got from your campaign into your database. You don't want to lose out on that, and you want to continue engaging with them. If you think of anything else, please do put them into the chat box. And if you want even more resources to help you create success on Giving Tuesday and other giving moments, you can go on to the Giving Tuesday website, www.givingtuesday.org, and click on how to participate, click on nonprofits. You'll see a lot of toolkits there. We'll also send over some India-specific toolkits to the ConnectFor team, so you can access it from them as well in the next week or so. So let's ask this question. Are you ready to leverage an upcoming giving moment? Do you feel ready? Okay, so a couple of things to ask yourself. Do you have a champion for your cause? It could be you, it could be a board member, it could be a volunteer. Do you have goals that you've set? Hopefully all of you do by now. Do you have a team that's going to come together and support you? And are you willing to try something new, even if it means that you may fail in the beginning, right? So if you have these 4 things, that means you're ready, you're set to make use of an upcoming giving day. I see a lot of yeses in the chat box. That's great. And this is to answer one of your questions. How do you pick a great platform, and what are some platforms we can use? Sometimes we get stuck with one aspect of a platform when we pick it, like maybe it's the fee structure, or maybe it's the tax advantage. But think about all of these different things when you pick a platform. Think of the different tools and features that the platform offers. Of course, think of the fee structure. Think of whether they can give you ongoing fundraising opportunities, and you can run multiple campaigns at the same time or only one, depending on what it is that you need. Tax advantages, an important thing to think about. Where are your donors coming from? Are they in India? Are they in a specific country? Is this platform able to give tax benefits to those countries? Then think about the reputation of that platform. And the best way to do this is to ask other nonprofits about their experience of using a specific platform. And then the last thing to think about is, is this platform able to get you reach outside of your own network, and how are they doing it? So put these down, ask these questions to the platform representative before you take a call on which platform you want to use. So look at the bigger picture. Don't just look at one aspect of the platform. And I've put down the names of some Indian platforms here. I may have missed 1 or 2. So if I've missed any, please put them into the chat box. If there's any platform that you're using that you found useful, please put them into the chat box as well. And with that, I'll close. But just want to urge you with this closing to reframe your thinking about how your job is not just to raise funds for your mission. It is that, but it's a lot more than that. Your job is to mobilize a groundswell of support for your cause, right? You're actually creating a movement of like-minded, passionate individuals when you create a campaign like this and give opportunity for people to participate in it. And giving moments like Giving Tuesday are a great time for you to galvanize this energy and, the generosity that's happening anyway at that time, to direct it towards really the change that you're seeking to create. So with that, and on behalf of the entire Giving Tuesday team, I'd like to say thank you and offer my profound gratitude to you for staying on this call and also for being a part of the social movement that we're all a part of to create a more just and generous world. So thank you for the work that you do. With that, I will stop. And Aishwarya, we can see if there are any questions.
Yes,
Thank you
it
so
was
much,
an
ma'am.
amazing session. I feel like it was a great learning for me as well. I've never seen like, such detailed session where we all are implementing something on this live session. So really, really thankful to you, Kavita, and the entire Giving Tuesday team for like giving this wonderful session. I think from the chat box only we can see how many comments we are receiving. So thank you so much for your time, and we really, really value the wonderful insights that you have provided to our participants. With that, with limit to the time, I would request the participants to, if you want to ask any question, you can ask now for like next 5 to 10 minutes. And in case you have more questions, I have shared the form with you. There you can just write your question, and I will get back to Kavita to answer those queries. So yes, open to all the participants. You can just raise your hand and you can ask the question. Or we can do one more thing, since there were too many like kind of insights and discussion and too many practices. If you would like to experiment those things first and do your own homework first, and then you would want to come back to us, that is also absolutely fine. So you can take 2 days of time. We will be posting this webinar video on our YouTube channel as well. So later on, also, if you would like to go through it, discuss this with your team, and in case you come up with any question pertaining to the topic, feel free to get in touch with us. We would be happy to answer your queries. Yeah. Okay, amazing. I think we'll do that. Once again, I would like to thank Kavita. Thank you so much for this lovely session. As I mentioned, like there were too many new things for me as well, and I think I'm going to go back to my team and tell them to listen to this session for sure, because it was really, really informative and insightful. So thank you so much for your time, your commitment, and your dedication to help out a lot of nonprofits who joined this call. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much all the participants for joining for ConnectFor's webinar. Through your constant support, we are like able to run this webinar as a full-fledged session. So thank you so much all the participants for giving your time, and hopefully you will be able to run your fundraisers successfully. And as I mentioned, if you have any queries or any doubts, feel free to contact us. I'm sharing the form again, so you can just fill that out. This will help us plan our future webinars as well. And in case you want to ask any question to Kavita, just drop us an email, or you can directly fill this form. Yeah. Thank you so much once again, Kavita Mathew. It was wonderful having you, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Yeah.
Thank you, Aishwarya, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Hope
Bye.
you all have a great evening. Take care.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. So much.